We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Tesam and Beis Meseches Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 59b. On the previous Amud, Rav said that if you have a situation of a woman who was nivala shelo kedarka, she had an atypical sexual relations, so in such a situation, Rav said that she would be psula lekahuna. That would be considered like she's a bu'ula, and she's puzzled not to kahuna, not a regular kohen, but she'd be psula to a kohen gadol. And so the Gemara asked from a brisa, which clearly implied that she's kosher to a kohen gadol. And so the Gemara now answers, Hamani Rabbi Meir. That brisa is following the opinion of Rabbi Meir. As Rashi over here says, Hamani Rabbi Meir, Da'amar Besula, Ad Sheyu Kol Besula Kayamin Prat LeBogeris. Rabbi Meir was the one that said that we exclude a Bogeris, meaning to say that a kohen gadol should not marry a Bogeris. Vayaser LeBivsula Lemu'ute Bu'ula Shelo Kedarka Desharia. And the word Bivsula, the extra bays, is coming to exclude a Bu'ula Shelo Kedarka, meaning to say that a Bu'ula Shelo Kedarka is permitted according to Rabbi Meir. And again, as the Gemara now says, V'Rav Da'amar K'Rebbe Lozer. And Rav doesn't follow Rabbi Meir, he follows Rebbe Lozer. V'Rav Da'amar Psula K'Rebbe Lozer. Rav who says Psula, he follows Rebbe Lozer. Da'amar Le'el who says before, Besula Mixas Besulim L'Ribuye Bogeris. He's the one that says it includes a Bogeris, meaning to say that the Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry a Bogeris. V'asa Bivsula L'Me'ute Be'ula Shelo Kedarka Kedol El. And Bivsula is coming to exclude a situation of Be'ula Shelo Kedarka, meaning according to Rav and according to Rebbe Lozer, a Be'ula Shelo Kedarka is Psula for a Kohen Gadol. But the Gemara continues, Ikar Rebbe Lozer, if Rav was talking according to the opinion of Rebbe Lozer, that's what he was saying, that if you have a situation of Bia Shelo Kedarka, then she's also to a Kohen Gadol. But Ma'yirya Mishum Be'ula, what do you even have to talk about the fact that she's a Be'ula? Typically, to have a zona, you could just say, according to Rebbe Lozer, anyway, she's a zona in that case. Da'amar Rebbe Lozer, because Rebbe Lozer said, Panoi ha'ba'ala pnuya, if you have an unmarried man together with an unmarried woman, and they have relations, Shelo l'shem ishas, not for the purpose of marriage, Asa zona, according to Rebbe Lozer, that woman is actually a zona. And as Rashi over here says, the havala zona va'afilu l'kohen hedyot asura, and she'd even be also to kohen hedyot. So if that was the case, so Rav wouldn't just need to say, if he's following Rebbe Lozer, he doesn't simply need to say that the bia shelo kedarka makes it that she's considered a be'ula and she's also to kohen gadol. According to Rebbe Lozer, she's also to a regular kohen as well. And so the Gemara now answers, Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Kagon sheniva lo lebehema. Case could be as follows. Let's say she has relations with a behema. That could be a case where she is not considered a zona, but she would be considered a be'ula in terms of a kohen gadol. Tahasa mishum be'ula ika mishum zona leka. Over there again, there's going to be an issue of the fact that she's a be'ula, but it's not going to be an issue of zona. As Rashi over here says, Isser zona leka di'alfina lekaman b'shmaitin ein znus lebehema. We're going to say later on, there is no znus for a behema, so that would be a situation where it would be relevant for Rav to state this halacha. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaya, but Abaya said to him, to Rav Yosef, either way you look at it, doesn't make sense. Because if you're going to say she's considered a be'ula when she has these relations with the animal, so zona nami havi, she should be a zona also. It should be the same thing. V'i zona lo havin, if she's not considered a zona, be'ula nami lo havi, so she shouldn't be considered a be'ula either. And the Gemara continues, now if you're going to say, Midi dehavi amukas eit shelo kedarka, maybe it should be similar to a case where a woman was injured, shelo kedarka, as Rashi over here says, midi dehavi amukas eit, the Rebbe Lozer kamer b'masnisin, lo yiso es mukas eit. Rebbe Lozer also says in our Mishnah that a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to have relations, or not allowed to marry a mukas eit. Again, a mukas eit is a woman who loses her besulim, but it's through some kind of injury. V'tiboy lememer da'afilu b'mukas eit, shelo kedarka psula. And so that could be the answer, that we're saying even by a situation of mukas eitz, shelo kedarka, that would be a case that she's psula. In other words, you have a situation over here where it's true. She's not considered necessarily be'ula, she's not considered necessarily a zona, but she's considered a mukas eitz, even though it's shelo kedarka. That's the chiddush of Rav. But the Gemara says to that, imkain, if so, ein loch isha sheksher lakuna. If you're going to say that a mukas eitz shelo kedarka is considered like a mukas eitz and it's a problem for a kohen gadol, there would be no woman that ever would be kosher, that it would ever be ksheira for a kohen gadol. Shalom nazis mukas eitz al yedei tzur, because every woman is going to use a rock in order to clean herself after she goes to the bathroom, and in such a situation she'll be a mukas eitz. As Rashi over here says, imkein ein loch isha sheksheira lekahuna gedola shalom nazis mukas eitz al yedei tzur shel kinuach beis hakisei. When she uses the bathroom, that's going to happen. So it can't possibly be that Rav was saying that the issue over here of shelo kedarka is like a mukas eitz shelo kedarka, because that cannot be a problem at all. And so again, we're back to our original additional question, Nivala Lebehema is not going to help anymore, according to Abaya, because if she's considered a Bu'ula in that case, she'll be considered a zona as well. And so the Gemara continues with another answer. Elo Amar Rabbi Zera, rather Rabbi Zera says, B'ma'enes. The case could be by a woman who's performing miyun, meaning she's a minor and she's refusing the marriage. Rashi over here says, Elo Amar Rabbi Zera, Mashkachas lo lahod Rav, aliva de Rebbe Lozer. We can find a case of Rav following the opinion of Rebbe Lozer. Again, we're following here the opinion of Rebbe Lozer that when it comes to a Kohen Gadol, it is going to be a problem by Shalo Kedarka to have a Bu'ula v'lo zona, but we have to have a situation over here of Shalo Kedarka where she's a Bu'ula and not a zona. So how are we going to have such a case? V'lo almana, v'lo grusha. Also, you have to have a situation where it's not going to be a case of almana, it's not going to be a case of grusha. So how can we have a case where we avoid all of these different issues and say that it's only an issue of Bu'ula? The case could be as follows. B'katana yisoma hanisis lebal. Let's say you have a situation of a katana, she's an orphan, and she's married to her husband. U'ba'ala Shalo Kedarka, he has relations with her Shalo Kedarka. He doesn't have regular, normal relations with her, he has Shalo Kedarka. U'miyanabo, and then she does miyan, so she refuses the marriage. So it's not a situation where she's a grusha, she's not a divorcee or anything like that. The ein kan psul znus, now you have no issue of znus over here, because she was married. The almonas v'gerishin, there's no issue of almonas and gerishin, because again, she refused the marriage. It wasn't a case where her husband died. It wasn't a case of divorce. The Ashmi'in and Rav, and that's what Rav is teaching us. The yesh kan psul bu'ula l'kohen gadol, that you have here by this bia Shalo Kedarka, you have a psul bu'ula for a kohen gadol. That could be the explanation of Rav. The Gemara continues. Amar Rav Shimi Bar Chia. Rav Shimi Bar Chia says, Niva lo lebehema. Let's say you have a woman who has relations with an animal. Kesheira l'kuna. Such a woman is kosher to kahuna. Rashi says, afilu l'kohen gadol. Even to a kohen gadol, she's kosher. The mukaseitz bi'alma. She's only a mukaseitz. She lost her basulim, but that's just like an injury. It's not like relations. Uman de shari, but mukaseitz shari bar. The point over here is the one who says mukaseitz is permitted to a kohen gadol. Of course, there's a shita like we saw in the Mishnah that mukaseitz is a problem for a kohen gadol, but according to the one who says that mukaseitz is permitted to a kohen gadol, nivala lebehema would also be permitted to a kohen gadol. And the Gemara continues, Tanya nami hachi, we have a brisa that supports this as well. Nivala lemisha eino ish. Let's say she has relations to somebody who's not a man. Rashi over here says behema, like an animal. We're talking about a case of bia with an animal. Afal pisha beskila, even though the punishment over here is skila, ksheira lekahuna, she's still kosher to kahuna. Rashi over here says, shebeskila miesh edem v'hasra, hecha deleka edem v'hasra, ksheira lekuna. She would get skila if there was edem and hasra. If there was witnesses and a warning, of course she'd get skila, she'd be put to death. But if there's no witnesses, there's no warning, then she's going to be ksheira lekuna, like Rav Shimi Bar Chia said. And the Gemara continues, Ki asa Rav Dimi Omar. When Rav Dimi came, he said the following, Ma'isa Briva Achas, there was a story with a girl, Behei Solo, that's the name of a place, Rashi says, Shem Makom, Shahaisa Mechabedes Asabayis, she was sweeping the house, V'rova Kelev, V'rava Kelev Kufri Me'achareha. Rashi over here says Kufri Klovim Gedolim Shetzadim Behen Chayos. So these are the large dogs. They use them to trap, to capture the animals. And so this animal came and had relations with her while she was sweeping the house. V'chshira Rebbe lekahuna. And Rebbe said she's kosher to kahuna. Rashi over here says Me'achareh. Again, the case was the Kelev of Kufri was Me'achareh, was from behind her. As Rashi says, Shalo Kedarka. We're talking here where the dog had relations with her, Shalo Kedarka. The I Kedarka lo gora mimukaseitz. Now, if it would be Kedarka, that would be no different than a mukaseitz. And so the case over here was, again, it's bia Shalo Kedarka. It's not a mukaseitz because it's Shalo Kedarka. It's with an animal. And Rebbe said she's kosher to kahuna. And so the Gemara continues, Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel says, well, a Kohen Gadol, when Rebbe said she's kosher to kahuna in this case, it even means she's kosher to a Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara interrupts and asks, Bimei Rebbe Kohen Gadol Mihava, was there a Kohen Gadol in the times of Rebbe? Rebbe didn't live during the times of the Beis HaMikdash. As Rashi says, Rebbe Lachar Churban Abayis Haya Kamadoros. He was generations after the Churban Abayis, several generations. Shu Sofa Tanoim, he was the end of the Tanoim. Uvimei Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Chorv Abayis, and we know that in the times of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that's when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Tetanan, like we learned in the Mishnah, Mishacharav Beis HaMikdash Hiskan Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai V'chulu. It says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made certain takonas after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So in any case, the Gemara is asking, what do you mean Rebbe allowed her to a Kohen Gadol? There was no Kohen Gadol. And so the Gemara says, Ela Ru'uya LeKohen Gadol. What it means is that Rebbe, when he said she's permitted, he meant in theory she could be permitted even to a Kohen Gadol. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rava mi Parzakia, the Mesoras Hashas changes the gear. See, Rava from Parzakia said to Ravashi, Minoha milsa d'amar Rabbanan, where do we get this idea that the Rabbanan say, Ein znus lebehema, that there's no znus for behema? Again, like we've been saying above, the relations with the behema is not considered znus. Tichsiv, because the Pasuk says, Lo savi esnan zona mechir kelev, talks about bringing karbanos to the Beis HaMikdash, and it says you can't bring an animal that was exchanged for a zona, for the services of a zona. You're also not allowed to bring an animal that was exchanged for a kelev. You can't bring those as karbanos to the Beis HaMikdash. Utanan, we learned in the Mishnah, esnan kelev u'mechir zona mutarim. The opposite, the reverse would be okay. Let's say it says esnan kelev, Rashi will explain in a minute, or let's say it's mechir zona, so those would actually be permitted. Rashi over here says, esnan kelev shim amar adam lezona. The case would be like this. Let's say a person says to a zona, heilach telezeh, says, take this teleh, take this sheep, v'hi bo'ali lekalbi, and then have relations to my kelev. So that would be a case of esnan kelev. In other words, you're giving her this sheep in services that she's going to have zenus with the kelev. Mechir zona would mean as follows: sheichlev zona betleh. Let's say he swapped a zona for a teleh, for a sheep. Both of those cases, that's the reverse cases, mutarim lemizbeach. Those would be mutter for the mizbeach. Umidashari esnan kelev. Now, from the fact that the esnan kelev is permitted for the mizbeach, al mulav znusu. So apparently, it's not considered znus. These relations with the kelev. So that's what the Gemara over here says again. Utanan esnan kelev u'mechir zona mutarim. When it comes to esnan kelev and mechir zona, that's mutter. Shenemar, like it says, gam shneim. It says both of them shnayim v'lo arba. That means both of them, meaning only the case of esnan zona and mechir kelev, but not the reverse. Not the case of esnan kelev u'mechir zona. And so again, you see from that it's only esnan zona. The kelev is not considered zona. It's not considered znus. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Anusas atzmo mafutas atzmo. Let's say Kohen Gadol, he raped a woman or he seduced a woman, so it's the woman that he himself raped, he himself seduced. Lo Yisa, the Kohen Gadol cannot marry that woman. Rashi over here says, Lo Yisa Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol can't marry her. Techsib besula yikach b'shas lekuchen tia besula. She has to be a besula at the time that he takes her as a wife, and therefore he's not allowed to marry these women. V'im nasa nasa. Now, if he does marry her, the marriage is going to be effective. Anusas chaveru mafutas. Now let's say you have a situation where the woman was raped by his friend or seduced by his friend. Lo Yisa, he shouldn't marry her either. V'im nasa, now if he does marry her, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov omer havlad cholol. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says the baby is considered a cholol, does not have any of the rights, he's disqualified as a Kohen. V'chachamim omer, and the chachamim say havlad kosher. In such a case, the child would be kosher. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, im nasa naso. Again, it said that if it's anusas atzmo, mafutas atzmo, so the marriage is a marriage. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Rav Huna says in the name of Rav, umotzi beget. It means the marriage is effective, but he can't maintain the marriage. He has to divorce her, he has to give her a get. So the Gemara says, 1 second, but 1 second. It says that the marriage, if he marries her, it is a marriage. Well, if he has to give her a get, so what's the chiddush of him nasa nasui? The chiddush can't simply be that they're technically married. The chiddush must be that they're allowed to maintain the marriage. It's obvious that she would require a get in that case. And so the Gemara says, Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, Lomar, it means to say, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Amar Aleph.